Hey there, welcome back to our channel. If you're a true crime enthusiast or a rookie detective in training, this is the best place for you. We bring you the most haunted mysteries out there with a deeper dig into those stories. Today, our focus is on one of the most incomprehensible and ghostly crimes that remains unsolved to this day. The Villisca Axe Murders are considered one of the most brutal crimes that never found a motive or a perpetrator, even after a century has gone by since that fateful day. Join us as we go through the events that took place in one quiet house in Villisca. The Moores lived in a modest house in the town of Villisca, Iowa, United States. Josiah and Sarah Moore, along with their 4 children, were known and well-liked figures in the Villisca community. The children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, were all from ages 11 to 5 years old respectively. All the Moore family members and 2 neighborhood girls who stayed with them the night before were found bludgeoned to death by the neighbors on June 10, 1922. All victims had severe head wounds caused by an axe. The time of the crime is recorded as between the evening of June 9, 1912, and the early morning of June 10, 1912. Even though the weapon, a thoroughly cleaned axe, was found at the crime scene, the crime remains unsolved. On June 9, 1922, the Moores, accompanied by 8-year-old Ina Stillinger and 12-year-old Lena Stillinger from the neighborhood, attended a Children's Day program hosted by the Presbyterian Church. Sarah Moore was a coordinator of the event, which was an end-of-the-year Sunday school program, and the Moore children, along with other Sunday school members, performed their little gigs. On Sarah's invitation, the Stillinger sisters went to stay the night with them. Everyone was home by 9:30 p.m. that night, climbing to bed after a little treat of cookies and milk. No one suspected a thing. It was on the next morning the neighbors got suspicious when the usually bustling house was rather quiet and seemed deserted. Their elderly neighbor, Mary Peckham, was the one who noticed this unusual stillness of the Moore residence. It was about 7:30 a.m. on June 10, 1922. She immediately called Ross Moore, Josiah's brother and local druggist. He arrived half an hour later. When they received no response from inside the house, their knocks and calls, Ross opened the front door with his spare key. Upon his inspection of the downstairs, he found the bodies of the Stillinger sisters in the guest bedroom. Villisca's primary peace officer, Henry Horton, was called immediately after. Horton found the bodies of the whole Moore family in their separate bedrooms. What he said after coming out of the house was, somebody murdered in every bed, and that left the whole community in desolation. The flow of the crime was said to be like this. When midnight was passing, the killer, or, as some evidence suggests, killers entered the house before the Moores and waited in the attic till they were asleep. On the way up, the killer had picked up Josiah's axe from the backyard. The murders started from the master bedroom, where Josiah and Sarah Moore were killed by blows to the heads. It had seemed that Josiah Moore had received more blows than the others, to the point his eyes were missing and his face was severely damaged. The blade of the axe had been used on Sarah, while others suffered blows from the blunt end to their heads. All the Moore kids were found in a similar condition. The only signs of struggle were found with Lena Stillinger, who was found lying crosswise on the bed and had a wound on her arm that investigators thought was a defensive wound. All the other victims were presumed to be asleep when the deathly blows were delivered. Lena's nightgown was pushed upwards and she was left bare, leading to the suspicions that she had been sexually molested, which were later proven to be fallacious. There were some unique items at the murder scene. One of them is the 4-pound slab of bacon placed by the axe that was used for the murders. The axe was washed and devoid of any sign of the murderer. The other odd items at the scene were a plate of untouched food and a bowl of bloody water. Another thing to mention about the house after the murders took place was that the mirrors and glass doors were covered by the clothes taken out of the dresser drawers. And all the bodies were found on the beds, heads covered with bedclothes. Investigators also found some gouge marks in the upstairs bedrooms where the parents and children were found. The investigations to find the murder of the Moore family tragedy lasted around a decade. One of the main suspects was Reverend George Kelly, who was in the town that fateful night. He reportedly had suffered a mental breakdown when he was young and had a history of accusations of peeping and requesting young women to pose nude in front of him. He was in Villisca that day to attend the Children's Day services. By the time bodies were found, he was on a train back home. Investigators' suspicions were brought towards him when he wrote several cryptic letters to the police and the family of the deceased. He was brought into questioning and thoroughly investigated. He was arrested in 1914 for sexually harassing a woman and suspected of the murders of Villisca. He was again arrested for Moore's murders in 1917. There, he confessed to the murders. However, he later denied that and was acquitted after 2 separate trials. Frank F. Jones, William Mansfield, Loving Mitchell, and Paul Mueller were some of the other suspects in the case. No matter how many suspects were there, no perpetrator was found. The Villisca Axe Murders remains one of the most horrific mass murders that was never solved, adding another cold case to the files. Only the speculations as to who's the murderer from various individuals even decades after the haunted night. Hope you were intrigued while we explored one of the most horrific crimes in American history. Like and subscribe to the channel to uncover some more crime stories. Thank you for watching.